Imagine you're Steve Cishek. I know, right? No hate on Steve, but I just can't imagine how many baseball fans have really taken his perspective over the years. But anyways, you're Steve Cishek. It's game 162 of the 2018 MLB season, the last day of school before the playoffs start. You get the call to take the ball in the 7th inning with the bases juiced. But so what? After a hit by pitch, you get the strikeout that you needed to shut down the Cardinals' rally, helping your team finish the year strong with a 10-5 win over the division rivals. Not only did your team win, but you just improved to the best record in the National League, sitting at 95-67 to end the season. You've successfully completed this marathon of a season. 162 games up, 162 down, and you're the best in the NL. And after all that, you're glorious NL Central champions. Wait, the NL Central hasn't been decided yet?
The division will be decided tomorrow afternoon here in Chicago.
How could that be? On September 1st, you had a comfortable 4.5 game lead over the NL Central Division. In fact, in the matter of just 2 games, you go from having the best record in the National League to watching the rest of the playoffs from at home on your couch. What you've just experienced is the result of one of the rare experiences in baseball where, despite the many combinations of win and loss records and the incredibly low probability, it is indeed possible to finish the season with the identical record as another team, forcing a dramatic Game 163 tiebreaker. Welcome back to another Brew City Baseball production. If you're new here, take a second to subscribe. It really goes a long way in helping me grow the channel. If you've been here before and you're already subscribed, you're the best. I appreciate you. Now let's get right into today's video. You're probably wondering, how rare could this really be? There's a fixed number of games and only 2 possible outcomes of a win or a loss. Obviously, teams are going to finish with identical records sometimes. And you'd be correct. Just look at the 2016 end of season NL standings. The Padres and Reds finished with identical 68 and 94 records. But when you're sitting at the bottom of the league, this weird coincidence doesn't really mean anything. Yet, in the same season, the Mets and the Giants finished owning a pair of identical 87 and 75 records, but being from different divisions and with enough playoff spots, both teams would advance to the wild card game, where the Giants eventually won. There really needs to be some pretty specific circumstances to warrant a Game 163. Either the fight for a playoff spot or a fight for seeding. And that's exactly what took place on October 1st of 2018. Actually twice. But today we're going to be focusing on the instant classic that took place in the windy city of Chicago between these two cutthroat rivals. But if you do want to learn more about Game 163 throughout the course of baseball, I'd suggest you check out this video by Jolly Olive, The History of Game 163. In terms of Brewers-Cubs Game 163, let's take a look at what happened to lead us up to this point. 2018 was an incredibly special season for the Brewers, ultimately ending a playoff drought that began after losing to the 2011 World Series champion St. Louis Cardinals. But this Brewers team is revamped, having successfully completed a rebuild faster than anticipated. They went out this offseason, and on January 25th, they acquired 2 star outfielders, bringing back Lorenzo Cain to Milwaukee and trading for Christian Yelich. While the crew would put together a pretty solid season, they entered September really hoping for a wildcard berth, trailing the Cubs by 4.5 games for the NL Central heading into the last month of the season and seeing a better path to the playoffs as a wild card team having to overcome the St. Louis Cardinals. However, an impressive September run would change this whole narrative as the crew really got hot at the right time. They would go 19-7 in the month of September in what would be termed Craig-Tember, where the team showed out in all aspects. Offensively, they had a slash line of 250, 343, 443, and an OPS of 786 as a team. Their ability to produce runs really stood out, averaging 5.54 runs per game, the second best in the NL for that month. On the mound, the Brewers pitching staff was absolutely dominant, allowing just 2.9 runs per game with an MLB best ERA of 2.77. Several memorable moments stood out down the stretch, such as this nice comeback against the Pirates, which even had Baker Mayfield rooting for the crew. The next day, the Brewers would go on to lose to the Pirates 3-0, but this would start a streak where they wouldn't lose for another 21 days. Let me just say that again. It would be 21 days before they would take another loss. And the way things go when you're on a winning streak, the Brewers pretty much had every break going their way for the last few games of the season. Ever seen 3 runs score on a wild pitch? Well, that happened, and the breaks would just keep coming too. The next day, they would score the go-ahead run on a botched pickoff attempt, a game in which Craig Counsell would test his whole opener strategy, using Dan Jennings for a single batter before handing the ball over to fastball Freddie. The crew would pile it on their division rival the next day, as Yelich would drive in 6 runners this game, while Ryan Braun would add 2 dingers, giving them a 12-4 win, bringing their magic number down to 1. The next day, with the playoff berth on the horizon, the crew carried a 2-1 lead over the Cardinals into the 8th inning. Trying to finish off the frame, Mike Moustakas lets this throw get away from him, and the Cardinals were poised to knot things up at 2. But as luck would have it, the Brewers would hold on to their lead. Doing his best to mimic Ryan Braun in 2012, it was Adolis Garcia with an infamous tumble around third base that would end the frame and ignite the crew's playoff clinching celebration following a dominant outing by flamethrower Jeremy Jeffress. This isn't where their magic would end, however, with one more series against the Detroit Tigers at Miller Park. Detroit wasn't just going to roll over, however, even with their 64-95 record entering this series. Game 1 was decided by an 8th inning home run that bounced off Nick Castellanos' glove, 10 years to the day after Braun's incredibly clutch 8th inning home run that propelled them to the playoffs in 2008. Brewers would also fall behind early in Game 2 against the Tigers, but Yelich doing Yelich things wasn't going to let this game end like that, hitting his 2nd homer of the game and his 3rd of the series to help them take Game 2, finally tying them atop the division with Chicago with just 1 game left in the season. Game 162 was far less dramatic, with the crew handily taking care of business, completing the series sweep against the Tigers with an 11-0 victory. Knowing this would force a Game 163, confidence was extremely high on the back of their current 7-game winning streak.
They know they got a problem tomorrow.
As a Brewers fan, I'd love to sit here and talk about the epic collapse that the Cubs had at the end of the 2018 season. But in reality, that's really not what would happen. After a red-hot 18-10 August, the Cubs still put up a winning record in the month of September, going 16-12 over the month. It was really just the scorching hot September that the Brewers went on that made this race into a race. Chicago actually had the slight edge over Milwaukee this season too, going 11-9 against the Brewers, but that's the fun thing about baseball. In one game, with everything on the line, history isn't important, just the box score at the end of the game. Having won the season series, the Cubs earned themselves home field advantage in what would be one of the most exciting and certainly the most important game of the regular season. The game that would decide who would officially finish the season with the best record in the National League. The game that would determine who would earn the opportunity to host the wild card game at home. Even with playoff spots guaranteed to both teams, securing this game would be huge so as not to have to face the loser of the NL West Game 163 with the possibility of being sent home packing after just 1 game. The Cubs would send Brewers killer to the mound in this one, Jose Quintana, who pretty much had his way with the Brewers in 2018. He held the crew to a 196 batting average, good for an OPS plus of 56, as Quintana would have a measly 2.13 ERA in 7 games against the crew that season. Even with the incredible season that Yelich was putting up, Quintana was the equalizer, holding him to a, wait, that can't be right, an .091 batting average in 11 career at-bats heading into the day. The first inning would get underway, and 3 ground balls later, the top of the frame would conclude with nothing on the board. The Brewers would send out Ulysses Chassin for this start, who would go on to throw a quality start and get the Cubs to go down in order in the first. Despite quite a few hard-hit balls, the teams would exchange donuts throughout the first 2 innings, before Triple Crown chasing Christian Yelich would tack on to his league-leading batting average with an RBI single in the top of the 3rd, bringing Orlando Arcia around to break the scoreless contest. Chassin would keep his momentum going too, until surrendering a solo shot to Anthony Rizzo, an absolute no-doubter that would luckily only count for 1 run, bringing the slate back to even. 3 batters later, up would step Jason Hayward, trying to give the Cubs their first lead of the game. Hayward crushes this ball, that despite being a homer in 10 ballparks across the league, a list which ironically includes American Family Field, which, I don't know, maybe there'd be a different result if this game were played in Milwaukee, but on this afternoon in Wrigley, turned out to be a can of corn. These teams would resume their donut exchanges in the 6th and 7th inning before the Brewers would clutch up in the 8th. A pinch hit double by Domingo Santana would set the crew up to break things open, which after this clutch single by Lorenzo Cain to put the Brewers up by 1, veteran Ryan Braun would tack on some insurance with this single, making it a 2-run Brewers lead, increasing their win probability to over 90% with only 6 outs remaining. With his out-getter mentality in full effect, Counsell saw the opportunity to put this game on ice and handed the ball to his best reliever, Josh Hader. Josh would quickly quickly sit the Cubs down in order in the bottom of the 8th, leading to a 9th inning lead for the Crew. After a scoreless 9th inning where Orlando Arcia would rope this ball 106 miles per hour for his 4th hit of the game, counts would leave nothing to chance and keep the ball in Hader's hand. Once again, grabbing the first 2 outs quickly, the Brewers sat on the brink of finishing off this historic September run, which albeit was bleeding a little bit into October. Oh, what's this? The Cubs aren't done yet? Javi Baez makes that clear by driving this ball to the gap to keep this one alive for slugger Anthony Rizzo. Having already gone deep today, this at-bat was certainly going to be a challenge for Rizzo, going up against one of the league's best left-handed relievers. That wouldn't bother Rizzo though, as Hader delivers and Rizzo is right on top of this pitch. Oh boy, deja vu. What just happened? Oh wait, that's the wrong clip. Let's try this one. Much better. Keon Broxton settles under this one as the Brewers pull this crucial game out against their division rivals, creating this instant classic moment and call by one of the best.
Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
Luckily for the Cubs, they would still make the playoffs, getting another opportunity to earn a full playoff series, this time taking on the Colorado Rockies once again at their home ballpark of Wrigley Field. In 2018, the Cubs and the Rockies were pretty evenly matched, splitting their 6-game season series at 3 games apiece, each scoring an identical 33 runs against each other over those games. But in a winner-take-all game, once again, all that would matter at the end of this one would be the final score. The Cubs had to be licking their lips here, knowing that a win would set them up for a chance at redemption against their NL Central foe. In what would turn out to be a grueling 4-hour and 55-minute wildcard game between the two, the Cubs found themselves trailing 2-1 in the bottom of the 13th inning. The Wrigley Field crowd, unable to purchase alcohol at this point due to league rules, soberly watched as the Rockies claimed a 2-1 victory, advancing to the NL Divisional Series against the Brewers. This loss was particularly disappointing for the Cubs, who entered the final weekend of the season with a 90% chance of making it to the divisional round. The team's hitters underperformed in the crucial game against the Brewers, only putting up 3 hits, and continued this disappointment in their wildcard game against the Rockies, failing to capitalize on opportunities against left-hander Kyle Freeland. Not to mention, Cubs manager Joe Maddon made some pretty questionable decisions, including choosing Jason Hayward as a pinch hitter over Kyle Schwarber in this crucial situation. Now, back to our boy Steve. Who would get the ball in this game, grabbing 2 outs in the 8th inning of this one before Javi Baez would deliver a game-tying double in the 8th inning, giving hope to the Cubs. But their offense was as quiet as an episode of Silent Library and would remain silent as the game went into extra innings, finishing the game going a dismal 6 for 43, which is only a 140 batting average, leaving 10 runners stranded on base. The loss marked the Cubs' earliest postseason exit since their resurgence in 2015. For Chicago, the past 48 hours have been a whirlwind. After finishing game 162 with the NL's best record, they would have their season ended in only a matter of 2 games, something that could really only happen in this situation. Meanwhile, the Brewers would go on to sweep the Rockies in 3 games and advance to the NLCS. While the Crew's chase of history would fall short, they ultimately gave the Dodgers a run for their money in a series that could have gone either way, battling them through a tumultuous 7-game series that ended with Bellinger and Puig putting a dagger in any World Series appearance hopes for Milwaukee. As somebody who already bought their ticket for this possibly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, yeah, this one hurt a little bit. Now, back to our exercise. Pretend you're Steve Cishek. Despite contributing to your team's NL leading 95th win on September 30th, losses on October 1st and October 2nd have your team on the outside looking in. Even with the bullpen leading 2.0 WAR and playing in almost half of your team's games over the season, appearing in 80 of them, after just one more season with your team, they would say goodbye and grant you free agency. After looking poised to play in a best-of-5 series in the 2018 playoffs, the Cubs would not get that opportunity. And for our friend Steve, the wildcard game would be the only time that he'd be handed the ball in the playoffs throughout his career. While this could still change in the future, time is certainly running out for the veteran, who's currently a free agent here in 2023. Just a reminder of the unpredictable and rapid ways in which a baseball game and ultimately a team season him can change. For this reliever, it would limit his playoff experience to only one game. But this unpredictability is what causes all of this excitement to happen in the first place, giving us this instant classic matchup between I-43 rivals. Anyways, if you haven't yet, please take a second to smash that like and subscribe button. It really goes a long way in helping me grow the channel. I'd also love to hear from you down in the comments below. What's your favorite Game 163 memory? Do you like the winner-take-all format, or prefer the way that baseball is transitioning into a best-of-3 series? Let me know down in the comments below. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time, baseball fans.